Welcome to a special edition of Grace Under Pressure, where my guest today is Ron Kaufman, who is joining us from Singapore. I'll tell you about Ron in just a moment. Those of you who know the show know that LinkedIn Live is a show that we talk about grace and grace under pressure. We talk about the soft stuff that's often too dismissed because it's the caring, the connecting, and the commitment we feel toward one another. Grace for me is generosity we show, respect we give, and compassion we demonstrate. And when you do it as a leader, like someone like Ron, especially during challenging times, it requires the ability to act for the greater good and energize the people around you. Welcome, Ron Kaufman.
Pleasure to be here with you, John Baldoni. Mwah! To you and to your audience.
Great. I want to tell folks about you. Ron Kaufman, no kidding, is the world's leading educator and motivator for uplifting customer service. He is known globally. I have seen Ron speak both virtually and in person. He is extraordinary. He's a speaker's speaker. He is energetic online and on stage, and he inspires. Trust me. Listen to him, watch him today. He's the author of the New York Times bestseller, Uplifting Service. Where did that come from? The proven path to delighting your customers. He's also written 14 other books. Ron's experience and commitment to results have been distilled into proven models and methods, and they really work. That's why he's so popular. And his work's been featured in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal. He's a global guru. As am I, and he was the #1 customer service global guru in the world. Rock on. His company is called, believe it or not, Uplifting Service, and it's a global education and consulting company. Anyway, Ron has lived in Asia and where he's in Singapore since 1990, and he's worked for the government there as well as Singapore Airlines and many, many companies all over the world. Ron, welcome.
Thank you very much, John. It's a pleasure to be here. Look forward to our conversation.
Great. You work globally. So we're in an upside down world, literally. COVID is spiking again. And what are what are your clients telling you?
Well, exactly what you said. The world is beyond uncertain. Let's just say it's unsettled. And, even when we use the word uncertain, it's a little bit entertaining, as if we ever had certainty, sort of the human compulsion for scientifically predicting and controlling and figuring it all out. That's not real human life. So we are now all globally encountering human life in a way that is more transparent. It's more vulnerable. It's more personal. It's more intimately unsettled in terms of our families, our working spaces, health and well-being. What about the future? What leaders are telling me is that they are navigating in better conversations with their own people about how to navigate for the well-being, not just of the customers and the company, but of colleagues. That there's, there used to be a concern for internal organizational culture because you want to motivate people, you want to retain people, you want to develop people. Now there's a different narrative about it. I actually want them to know that we care about them.
Ron, I have to say, I asked this question of all of my guests, and I think yours is the most upbeat answer of anyone. And part of it is because you put our crisis, while it's unparalleled for anyone in our lifetime, certainly, you put it in context. Business life itself is never totally certain. It is upside down. And the way, we rely on our human ability to connect, hey, that's not a negative. So
it's a huge positive. And, John, think about the era where everyone on this call is alive post Second World War. So we didn't go through the horror and the trauma of that the world did. Oh, and prior to that was the Depression. Oh, and prior to that was the First World War. So we kind of grew up in a certain prosperous, progressive era. Young people, I have a nephew who recently graduated from a school in New York. He's about 22. And at his graduation, which was virtual, somebody said, what are you kids going to do? And he said, well, you have to remember, we grew up with SARS. Then we had an Asian financial crisis. Then we had 9/11. Then we had a global financial crisis. Now we've got COVID. So our ability, our anticipation of uncertainty is a given. That's the world in which we live. It's you older people who think that things are supposed to be so settled.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Ron, you are known for customer service, and I want to jump in here and show people what it is you do. And
Sure.
if I can.
John, while you're bringing it up on screen, I'll just say, you shortened the subtitle of the book. It's The Proven Path to Delighting Your Customers, Colleagues, and Everyone Else You Meet. And when I was writing the book, of course, you want happy customers because that's where revenue comes from. It allows for profitability. It allows for financial well-being in the world and real contribution in life. But colleagues, that's the team that you work with, you see, you care about, you coordinate with every day. And when you say, and everyone else you meet, we're raising service to a very different level where it's not just about a competitive advantage, but it's actually about a social initiative. What you're showing on screen right now is a particular architecture that I developed to be able to help organizations think more clearly about how do you actually design and develop a successful culture of uplifting service, given that that's not a topic that's taught in school.
Right. So, I mean, you told me this is evolving. So this is what you built, the fundamentals are. What's changing now?
Yeah. When I wrote the book, I realized that nobody had actually written a definition of the word service that was so simple, so clear, so universally applicable that people could hear it and go, yep, got it. That makes sense. It took me almost 20 years to figure it out, but it goes like this. Service is taking action to create value for someone else. Service is taking action. You got to do something face-to-face, on the phone, online. You got to take action to create value for someone else, or if it's self-service, for yourself. And John, on that definition, this whole architecture was created, the brand was created, all the global implementations in government and B2B and B2C, all created, very successful. And then about 3 years ago, I realized, my own definition is actually not updated like it needs to be. It really should be that service is taking action to create value for someone you care about. And then that raised the question, well, what do you mean by care? And so I started researching it very vigorously for about 4 years. And you know what the philosophers told me? It's very difficult to define. I said, well, that's not helpful. And then most people hear the word care and they think of a wheelchair and healthcare, which is normal because the word karu comes from the old German, which means to grieve and to worry about someone who's dying, which made sense back then.
Yeah.
That's not what we mean today. So I've had to literally define care as concern for someone's well-being. So then you could say, well, what's service? If it creates value, it contributes to their well-being. So service is care in action. And making that not just a platitude, but making that something that even a business leader can think about, then they're thinking, what does it mean to contribute to the well-being of my customers, the future well-being of my colleagues and my team members? That's very different than how do I create value and get a high score?
And I think that this slide, I believe, is what we're talking about. Am I correct?
Exactly. On the left side, service is action that creates value. What makes it valuable is that someone says it contributes to their well-being, financial, emotional, relational, ecological. They go, I like that, matters to me. Okay, I value it. That's service. Care is concern, attention with intention for someone's well-being, not just in this moment, but into the future. And so you start to think about, wait a minute, what kind of relationship do I really want to have with my colleagues or with my vendors or with my partners or with my neighbors or with my customers? And it's something that's not just about the action and the value and close the deal. It's about the future we're creating together.
It's interesting the way you've integrated the care into this. It make it much more sustainable.
Yeah, and sustainability with customers, so they come back, with colleagues, so that they're inspired and developed to do their best, with the community in which you live, which includes who's in the schools, where are the disadvantaged neighborhoods, where are your future employees going to come from, where do your customers really live, what's going on in their world, and of course, the ecological concern, which is very much on everyone's radar today. And so, when you look at all of that and say, well, what is care? Care is concern for well-being. What is well-being? Are we talking about humans? Then it's all of it.
Ron, give me because it's something I talk about, but I struggle with, and I have a concept I call the culture of service in an organization.
Okay.
How does it define service or care, colleague to colleague or employee to employee? How do you see
Perfect. Yeah, let's take a classic situation in a large organization where silos have developed over time. You know, that's not my job, that's your job. This is my department, that's your department. You get that kind of split right there. So if you authentically care about the well-being of the culture of the company, you want to have a service culture, then you would have a department look at another department and literally ask questions like, what is it that we're doing now that's actually making life difficult for you that we should think about and consider, right? What is it that you'd like us to do that would make life easier for you? Okay. What ideas do you have for how we could work together that would actually make it easier for both sides? Right? You know, what have we never done for you that you'd be really surprised if we ever did? Now, we're not saying and asking those questions that we're promising to do those things. But how often do the questions even get asked?
Like never.
Yeah, and then so if you can get both departments asking it and listening, then you can get a partnership of internal service. And that's really what a service culture inside an organization is. I give you a dysfunctional example. When people talk about internal customer, I hate the phrase, and I get it out wherever I see it, because people then say, well, I'm the customer. So your job in HR or your job in finance is to serve me. I'm the customer. And that's not the case inside an organization, because both sides could take action that would create more value. So your service partners with each other.
Or each one is a customer, but your word partner is better. So
then we have a mutual responsibility.
Yeah. And I like how you phrase this with, in a way, the service becomes removing a burden, removing an obstacle. It's not like it goes beyond what can I do for you, which is fine. But then some people might perceive that as hostile. But if you say, what's holding you up? I mean, that's what we do in coaching. You know, I mean, what's holding you back? Essentially, that's what you're asking. Am I correct? So,
yeah, and that's like one side of the equation is, what are you concerned about? What are you worried about? What's the problem? What's the issue? The other side is, what do you dream about? What do you hope for? What do you aspire to? What do you want to, what are your ambitions? And you really want to listen to both. You don't want to only be the problem solver. You're also the future enabler.
Right. And it requires ongoing dialogue, correct? So,
absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. So how does it play out for the customer? We're familiar with customer service, but I know you take it far beyond. So what does it mean? So,
and when you say, what does it mean? What's the it that you're asking about?
When the service is care and it extends to customers. So.
Yeah. Then there's okay, I'm going to say something here. People go, there's an authentic concern for the future well-being of the customer. Now, let's be clear. I'm not saying that every company is in that business, or even their business model may not want them to say that they're going to be in that business. I mean, you sell cigarettes.
Yeah.
Right. Well, okay, but let's use an example. If you're driving along on the highway and you've got a car that either needs an electrical charge or you need to fill up the tank with some petrol, old fossil fuel days. The person driving along on that highway, and you work there, you're indoors, you're selling them the candy bar or the drink or whatever it is, you're never going to see them again.
No.
You're never going to see them again. So you could look at it and say, this is merely a transaction. I just need to take the credit card and swipe it and give the receipt or whatever it may be. Or you could say every single person that comes into this little spot here along the side of the road is on their way somewhere. And the moment they drive out, I'm in their past. So I could say, transaction done, money complete, no complaint. Maybe I gave them a smile. Maybe they give me a smile. But I could also say to them as they're going out, I wish you a good journey. Drive carefully, right? Have a good trip. The person goes, yeah, I'm going home after. I hope you get home safely. Right, going off to see my grandma. Oh, enjoy seeing her. Give her a hug for me. I mean, what? Costs nothing. Uplifts the spirit of service in the world. And you never know when putting that out into the world. But the guy's just driving by. Never going to see him again. Yeah, but he's on Facebook. Yeah, but he's got friends. Yeah, and you never know.
Well, I'm glad you did that because I've had customer service interactions like that with people, and they get to and it's a reflection of who they are. They're naturally outgoing, but we remember it, and we
Right.
make comment to a
Right.
friend or a spouse or whatever, and it just it's one of the things that led me to focus on grace, was because I would call those moments of grace. They're tiny. They're just incidental. It's an intended act of kindness. And maybe in those circumstances, the person just said, well, I don't know that I'm being kind. I'm just being me, but they really are. And they're good reminders of our humanity.
Humanity. And, John, you say people who are naturally inclined like that. And sure, there are some people like that. I think our challenge as a society and as a species is to build a culture that educates people to that encourages people to that role models that salutes that.
Absolutely. And I'll tell a little story. I remember this is a young man. Well, he wasn't a young man. He was a teenager. And I once saw, he was at my son's high school at the time. And he saw me, walked over and introduced himself. And he was just so courteous. And I said, that young man is going someplace. He's now a grown man and a father, and a very successful executive. No surprise, and,
Right.
but his parents raised him with a sense of courtesy and, that kind of stuff. And
then we got to ask the question, how come the Department of Education, the school board, the principal, the parent-teacher association aren't yet looking at that kind of phenomenon, saying for social well-being and future success of that human being and their family and the community and the neighbors that they're going to contribute to, like that young man will, this is essential for us to build that culture and provide that encouragement and that education.
It is. And it does come down to education, but it comes down to parenting. And, people don't think it's as important anymore. I think because we're conditioned, as you just said, to being transactional, and much of life is transactional. That's fine. I don't need to have a relationship with somebody who sells me a candy bar. I shouldn't even be buying candy bars. But anyway,
it was a health bar. It was a health bar.
Right. Yeah. But it was, it's that interaction, it's the connection, and that's our humanity. And you raise a good point, and I think we should. And I do. Let's give a shout out. I know there are teachers who do that. I know that there are educators who integrate it into their life,
and business leaders and politicians.
Yep. So, and it's a good thing. Do you have one more slide you want me to show? So
that's a bit more complex. If people are interested, they can come to my LinkedIn profile and follow, and they'll get all kinds of good stuff. I think our conversation, if you want to bring it up, I'll happy to narrate it.
I'd like to do it a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, John, I've been in the world of customer service for 30 years. And when I joined it in 1990, the big conversation was customer satisfaction. And there was this expectation that if you satisfied a customer, they'd be a loyal customer. And so then the whole concern and the focus was don't make mistakes, don't get complaints, do Six Sigma, get it right the first time. And, the whole culture of organizations and of service itself was about meet the service level agreement, hit the expectations. Nothing wrong with that. But then some companies said, wait, we're going to differentiate. We're not only going for satisfaction, we want to delight. And so that was the whole era of like moments of truth and how do you surprise people and, the unexpected and all that was fine, but it was quite ad hoc. And so then what happened is people said, no, we actually need to look at the experience. We need to look at the overall journey map, end to end, use design thinking, cross-channel. And that's pretty much, that's often where companies are today, trying to figure that out so that you don't have great service over here and a horrible experience over here at this one point. Social media came in like a tsunami. And so the concern around advocacy, ambassadorship, social media praise rather than getting flamed, that whole era of loyalty. And, many people know of this thing called the Net Promoter Score, which is extremely simplistic, but that score only really emerged during the particular era where loyalty was the concern. What's the likelihood you'll recommend us to a colleague or a friend? What you really want to know is other things like, have you actually recommended us to a colleague or a friend? Or to what extent are you social and advocating for us? But where we're going today, and COVID has simply accelerated this like a freight train, on a racetrack, is to the phenomenon of care in the world of service. Not every company is interested in going there. Not every leader is going to get their team there. But look at what it says: authentic concern for well-being. And that's where the sustainability conversation, United Nations 17 sustainability goals, concern for future well-being ecologically at a community level, that's now all merging with this idea of service. And the young people today, they know it. They can smell it. They know when it's real and when it's fake, and they're going to move their dollars and their custom in the direction of brands and companies and work in companies that'll provide that too.
Great. That's a wonderful, most intriguing to me, Ron, is what you basically, in my words, you take a comprehensive or a holistic look into this. It's far beyond obviously the transaction, but the relationship. But I'm mostly intrigued whether you said that the relevance to community, and that is so important now, with certainly in the States, the social injustice, which has come to the fore, and rightly so, and we're wrestling with it. And so when you said earlier about addressing the communities and where we operate, that's where so many companies need to begin. So,
yeah, and it's not just companies. I mean, we could say, since you started this at the country level, there's an evolution of civilization. So you've got the United States right now just waiting for a really fast vaccine to come through and take care of this problem, make it go away. Yeah. Whereas you've got countries, New Zealand, Australia, Singapore, where I am, where the entire population says, this is not a matter of personal freedom. This is a matter of social and communal well-being. We have a civic responsibility. If this is what we need to do, nobody wants it, but this is what we need to do. Why? Because we don't want grandma to die. Yeah. Because we don't want to overflow our hospitals. Because my personal freedom, I'm willing to throttle it back for the sake of the well-being of the community, not like I'm moving that makes me a dictator state. But, the United States is quite unique in the world of saying freedom above all. Yeah. Well, COVID comes along and says there's a consequence.
That's a misnomer. That word freedom or quote liberty is thrown about ad hoc without the coupling word, which is responsibility. And what the ironic thing to that is, any organization which has been around for a long time lives by principles of responsibility. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. So,
where did your rights come from? Because people have committed to certain responsibilities, and those things need to be written together. Isn't it amazing? The Bill of Rights doesn't say the Bill of Rights and responsibilities.
Yeah. No, it's true. And our founders understood that. And in our modern world, our military, which has kept us safe, does that. And when we have enlightened leaders, they do too. But too often it gets
and essential workers, healthcare people. I mean, you think about the people who put their lives at risk every day to go help take care of other people.
Right. No, you're so right. And so by thinking of care, it's such it's an umbrella concept, if you will. And it dovetails exactly with what I believe in with grace. And you've just been more clever at it.
Oh, I think grace is pretty clever, because what you've done is I come at it more from the, how do you transact with this and create organizations and enable commerce and the development of institutionalized education, et cetera? You're coming from what's the human experience, the individual personal life, well lived, et cetera.
Yeah. And so, but that's where leadership comes in. And it's our concept of servant leadership, but there's also a sense of, should be equality in leadership, in the sense that we're all in this together, are we not? So
we're all in this together, and we're not all equally talented in different areas. We're different. We're human beings. So then it's really the coordination with one another. It's the commitment to life together that allows each person to flourish.
which requires a bit of responsibility and commitment and stuff. So I want to throw out, you have a story of grace that you can share with us. Do you
Sure.
want to tell us about it?
So for 30 years, John, 30 years, I was on airplanes more than 100 times every year. Thank goodness my home airport is the #1 airport in the world. Yeah. And I loved that life. I really did. And there came a certain moment where I said to my wife, we almost never go on vacation. We're scuba divers, so we would go somewhere and take a few days, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, see family a lot, but not real vacation. And I read a book by Stefan Zweig, an Austrian writer who wrote Between the Two World Wars, called Magellan. And it's the story, the biography of Ferdinand Magellan, which was pronounced Magallanes in Spanish.
Yes.
Who actually took the fleet that found the passage that went beneath South America that came up the other side. That was he believed it was possible, got 5 ships. Only one of them staggered home at the end. Well, I was incredibly inspired. So I said, honey, let's sail through the Straits of Magellan. We'll go on a cruise.
Yeah.
I've never been on a cruise in my life. Let's go on a cruise.
Yeah.
And we'll see glaciers. And my wife had a dream to see penguins. Okay, let's go do this. Let's go do this, right? So we get on the ship, nice ship. We have a nice suite. We're going along, going down Argentina, going through the Magellan Straits, starting to come up along the coast of Chile. COVID's breaking out. Not on our ship, fortunately, but Chile closed the border. The ship had to turn around, sail back through the Magellan Straits. So I got a double and started going up Argentina, and Argentina closed the border. And we got to Uruguay, and Uruguay closed the border. And fine. So there were 3 weeks that we were sitting on the ship, right? Meanwhile, COVID was doing this to our, to the world. Yeah. Including to our company. Because we had airline clients and hospitality clients and retail clients. Now we also have banks and finance, technology, et cetera. So the company's doing fine. But, and we had to manage all this from the ship. And we didn't know when we were getting off the ship.
Yeah.
Right. So, this was one of those moments, John, where you make sure someone else has your will. Yeah. Because, what happens if COVID breaks out on the ship and you end up in some foreign country's medical system? We really didn't know. No. When we finally got back to Singapore had imposed a 14-day mandatory hotel room quarantine.
I remember you posted that on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever.
And my wife and I got put in one of the smallest hotel rooms in the city. There was room for 6 steps before you bumped into the wall. Turn around, 6, bumped in. 2 people, 14 days. You can't leave the room, and the window doesn't open.
Oh my God.
Okay. And the view is a parking lot. 14 days. And it's like, you could say, oh my God, what suffering? But the grace was, it was a cocoon. And for my wife and I, and for our marriage, and for what we really are committed to and want to do with the future, it enabled us, it forced us to melt down and then get ready to prepare to come back out again, which is where we are now. Yeah. And, I look at that and I go, oh, thank goodness that happened. It looked like such a dramatic interruption and inconvenience, and yet it was a grace.
That is what a wonderful story. And, I can just see myself, I would be going crazy. And, but you looked at the bright side and it came out for the better. So,
and you learn some things, John, like for anybody who may be married or in a relationship here, you learn things like, don't raise your voice. Even a little bit.
Oh yeah, I think. Well, I've been married 41 years, and I have learned that, or sometimes unlearned it. So whatever. Ron, you have been a terrific guest. How can people find you?
So I'm easy. It's ronkaufman.com. KAUFMAN.
And I will put that in the notes.
Follow.
Great. Ron, you have been a man of grace for me today. And with that, I want to say we're done. Goodbye.
Thank you, John. Thank you to all your listeners and viewers. Mwah.